Have you ever loved someone who seemed to pull away the moment things got deep? One minute they're close, the next minute they disappear into silence, and you start asking yourself, do they even care? But what if I told you something that could completely change the way you see love? What if the distance is not rejection, but fear? What if the silence is not absence, but emotional protection? And what if the avoidant person in your life is fighting an internal battle between love and fear every single day? Because sometimes the people who struggle the most to express love are the ones who feel it the deepest. Listen carefully, because this can transform your understanding of human connection forever. Most people think love always looks obvious. They think love is constant texting, endless reassurance, emotional intensity every moment of the day. But human beings are more complex than that. Some people were taught that vulnerability is dangerous. Some people learned early in life that opening their heart leads to pain, abandonment, betrayal, or loss. So they built emotional armor, not because they don't feel, but because they feel too much. And when an avoidant loves you, something extraordinary begins to happen inside them. They fight themselves. Part of them wants to run. Part of them wants to stay. Part of them fears dependence. Part of them craves connection. That inner conflict is real. See, people judge avoidance too quickly. They see withdrawal and assume there's no love. But wisdom teaches us something deeper. Behavior is often protection, not truth. A guarded heart is not always a cold heart. When an avoidant loves you, they may not say, "I need you" every day. But watch their actions. Watch how they quietly make space for you in their life. Watch how they remember the little things. Watch how they return after pulling away. Watch how they slowly let you into places they never let anyone enter before. For them, vulnerability is not casual. It is sacred. Every small emotional step they take is enormous. When they share their fears with you, that's love. When they stay during conflict instead of disappearing forever, that's love. When they allow themselves to be seen without the mask, that's love. Because the truth is, emotionally avoidant people are not heartless. They are often deeply wounded people trying to protect a heart that once broke in silence. And here's the powerful lesson. Real love is not about forcing someone to become who they are not. It's about understanding the language of their soul. Some people shout love, some whisper it, some struggle through it. But love is not always loud. Sometimes love looks like someone trying to stay, trying to trust, trying to open up when every instinct inside them says, run. That effort matters. Now listen to me carefully, because this is where transformation happens. You cannot heal someone by chasing them. You cannot create safety through pressure. And you cannot force emotional intimacy before trust is built. Love grows where safety exists. The strongest relationships are not built on emotional perfection. They are built on patience, understanding, emotional strength, and truth. And when an avoidant finally feels safe enough to stop running, they often love with incredible depth, loyalty, and devotion. Why? Because they do not open their heart easily. So when they finally do, they mean it. But this message is not only about understanding them. It is about understanding yourself, too. Do not lose your worth trying to prove you are lovable. Do not abandon your own emo. Chanel needs while waiting for someone to heal. Love must have balance. Compassion must include self-respect. The greatest relationships happen when two people choose growth over fear. And that is the deeper spiritual principle here. Every human being wants connection, but fear blocks love. Fear says, protect yourself. Love says, trust again. Fear says, hide. Love says, be seen. The battle between fear and love exists inside every person. So if an avoidant is slowly opening their world to you, if they keep showing up despite their fears, if they let you see the parts of themselves they hide from everyone else, understand the courage behind that behavior. Because sometimes the strongest love is not the loudest. Sometimes the strongest love is the person who is terrified of closeness but chooses you anyway. People often misunderstand the way emotionally avoidant individuals express love because they are looking for loud emotions, dramatic declarations, or constant reassurance. But avoidant people rarely communicate love in obvious ways. Their emotions run deep, yet their expression is guarded. And that is why one of the most important truths to understand is this: avoidance. Often express love through actions, not words. An avoidant person may struggle to say, "I miss you," but they will quietly make sure you get home safely. They may not constantly text you romantic messages throughout the day, but they will remember the smallest detail you mentioned weeks ago. They may not openly talk about their feelings, but they will show up when you truly need them. This is because avoidants are often uncomfortable with emotional exposure. Words can make them feel vulnerable, exposed, and emotionally unsafe. Actions, however, feel more controlled and manageable. Many avoidants grew up learning that emotions were dangerous, overwhelming, or even ignored. Some were taught to suppress feelings instead of expressing them. Others experienced rejection when they opened their heart, so they learned to protect themselves by becoming emotionally self-reliant. Over time, they built a habit of showing care indirectly rather than verbally. To the outside world, this can appear cold or distant, but internally they may care deeply. This is where people make a major mistake in relationships. They judge love only by verbal affection. They expect constant emotional reassurance and when they do not receive it, they assume there is no love. But wisdom requires you to look deeper than words. Human beings communicate love differently. Some speak it openly, while others reveal it quietly through consistency, effort, protection, and presence. When an avoidant person truly loves someone, they begin investing energy into that person's life. They create space for them in their routines. They make sacrifices without announcing them. They may solve problems for you, support your goals, or offer practical help instead of emotional speeches. Their love often appears in the form of reliability rather than emotional intensity. For example, an avoidant may never write long romantic paragraphs, but they will drive across town to help you when your car breaks down. They may struggle to say, "I need you," but they will become uncomfortable when you pull away emotionally. They may not constantly express affection verbally, but they will quietly prioritize your well-being. These actions are meaningful because avoidants do not naturally invest deeply unless they genuinely care. Their actions are often their safest form of vulnerability. And this is important to understand. For avoidants, emotional expression can feel risky. Every act of closeness requires internal effort. Even small gestures may represent deep emotional courage. If they initiate contact, include you in personal parts of their life, remember details about you, or consistently return after periods of withdrawal, these behaviors often reveal emotional attachment more than words ever could. The challenge is that many people overlook subtle love because they are conditioned to expect dramatic love. Society teaches people that love must always be loud, emotional, and obvious. But mature understanding recognizes that love can also be quiet, steady, and deeply practical. An avoidance love is often hidden inside ordinary moments. It is in the way they listen carefully even when they say little. It is in the way they try to fix problems that affect you. It is in the way they stay connected despite their fear of dependence. It is in the way they slowly allow you access to their private world. These behaviors matter because avoidants do not easily lower their guard. Trust is difficult for them. Emotional dependence can feel terrifying. So when they consistently take action to remain present in your life, it often reflects a level of care they cannot fully communicate verbally. Understanding this does not mean ignoring your own emotional needs. Healthy communication still matters. Emotional growth still matters. But if you only listen to what avoidants say and ignore what they consistently do, you may completely miss the depth of their feelings. Because for many avoidant individuals, actions are not separate from love. Actions are their language of love. One of the most painful misunderstandings in relationships happens when someone interprets emotional distance as a lack of love. Especially with emotionally avoidant individuals, distance can feel confusing, frustrating, and deeply personal. One moment they seem connected and emotionally present, and the next moment they withdraw into silence, isolation, or independence. To many people, this behavior looks like rejection. But in many cases, distance does not always mean disinterest. Sometimes it means fear of vulnerability. Avoidant individuals often experience closeness differently than others. While emotional intimacy may feel comforting and natural to one person, it can feel overwhelming and threatening to someone with avoidant tendencies. The closer they become to someone, the more emotionally exposed they feel. And for a person who has learned to associate vulnerability with pain, disappointment, loss, or emotional suffocation, closeness can unconsciously trigger fear instead of safety. This fear is rarely logical. It is deeply emotional and often rooted in past experiences. Some avoidants learned early in life that depending on others led to hurt. Maybe their emotional needs were ignored, criticized, or dismissed. Maybe they experienced unstable relationships where love felt unpredictable. Over time, they developed a protective strategy. Rely on yourself, minimize emotional dependence, and maintain control. This emotional survival pattern becomes so deeply wired that even when genuine love appears, their nervous system still reacts as if closeness is dangerous. That is why avoidants often pull away precisely when emotions become real. The moment a relationship begins to deepen, fear starts speaking inside them. Fear of losing freedom, fear of being controlled, fear of disappointment, fear of being fully seen, fear of abandonment. Ironically, even fear of losing the person they love can trigger withdrawal because emotional attachment itself feels vulnerable. So they create distance, not always because they want to leave, but because they are trying to regulate emotions. They do not fully understand themselves. This is why an avoidant may disappear for a while after an emotionally intense moment. They may become quiet after deep conversations. They may suddenly need space right after things start feeling close. To the other person, this behavior can feel cruel or confusing. But internally, the avoidant is often battling emotional overload rather than lack of care. The key is understanding the difference between emotional fear and emotional indifference. Someone who truly does not care becomes consistently disconnected without effort, concern, or return. But avoidants often come back. They reconnect after distance. They check in quietly. They continue showing interest through subtle behaviors. Even while struggling with closeness, they still maintain a thread of connection. This push and pull dynamic is not always manipulation. Sometimes it is the internal conflict between longing for love and fearing the vulnerability that love requires. The deeper the feelings become, the stronger this conflict can grow, and this confuses many people because society often teaches a simple equation. If someone loves you, they will always move closer. But human psychology is more complex than that. For avoidants, love itself can activate protective defenses. Emotional closeness forces them to confront fears they spent years avoiding. Their distance is often emotional self-protection. That does not mean every avoidant behavior should be excused or tolerated without boundaries. Healthy relationships still require communication, emotional accountability, and mutual effort. But understanding the emotional meaning behind distance can completely transform the way people interpret avoidant behavior. Instead of immediately assuming rejection, you begin to recognize emotional fear. You begin to see that sometimes silence is not emotional absence. Sometimes it is emotional overwhelm. Sometimes needing space is not a desire to disconnect forever. Sometimes it is an attempt to regain internal control over feelings that suddenly feel too intense. And one of the strongest signs that an avoidant genuinely cares is this. Despite their fear, they continue returning to the connection. Because emotionally avoidant people do not stay emotionally attached to just anyone. If they repeatedly re-enter your world, continue investing energy, remember details about you, and struggle internally with closeness instead of simply disappearing permanently, it often reveals emotional attachment beneath the distance. Love does not always look emotionally smooth. Sometimes love looks like someone fighting their own defenses. Sometimes love looks like hesitation mixed with effort. Sometimes love looks like distance followed by return. Because for an avoidant person, vulnerability can feel terrifying even when the love itself is real. One of the clearest signs that an emotionally avoidant person truly loves you is not perfection, emotional smoothness, or constant closeness. In fact, their love may look complicated from the outside. They may pull away, become quiet, or create distance during emotionally intense moments. But despite all of that, there is one behavior that reveals something deeper happening beneath the surface. They keep coming back emotionally. And when an avoidant keeps returning emotionally, it often reveals a level of attachment far greater than most people realize. Emotionally avoidant individuals are naturally wired to protect themselves from vulnerability. Independence feels safe to them. Emotional distance feels controlled. Depending too heavily on someone else can feel terrifying because it exposes them to the possibility of pain, rejection, disappointment, or emotional loss. That is why avoidants often create space when emotions become too intense. Their instinct is to retreat inward whenever they feel emotionally overwhelmed. But here is what makes emotional return so meaningful. Avoidants do not repeatedly reconnect with people they feel nothing for. They may distance themselves temporarily, but if they continue finding their way back to you emotionally, it usually means the connection matters deeply to them. Every return represents an internal battle between fear and attachment. Part of them wants emotional safety through distance, yet another part cannot fully let go of the bond they feel with you. This internal conflict is important to understand because many people mistake temporary withdrawal for emotional abandonment. They see distance and assume the avoidant has stopped caring, but often the opposite is true, the stronger. The emotional attachment becomes the more vulnerable the avoidant feels, and vulnerability activates fear. That fear can push them away temporarily, but genuine emotional attachment keeps pulling them back. This is why avoidants often maintain subtle emotional contact even during periods of distance. They may check on you unexpectedly. They may reappear after silence with small conversations or gestures. They may watch from a distance before slowly reconnecting again. Sometimes they cannot fully explain why they return. Even they may struggle to understand their own emotional behavior. But attachment has a way of revealing itself through repeated emotional re-engagement. For an avoidant person, emotional return is rarely casual. Every time they come back emotionally, they are moving against their own protective instincts. Their nervous system may tell them to detach completely, but their feelings keep drawing them toward connection. This creates the classic push and pull dynamic often seen in avoidant relationships. Distance followed by closeness, withdrawal followed by reconnection. And while this pattern can become unhealthy without communication and emotional growth, it also returns. Reveals something significant: they are emotionally invested. People who feel nothing usually leave permanently and effortlessly. They detach without internal conflict. They do not repeatedly struggle with connection. But avoidants often experience emotional contradiction. They crave closeness while simultaneously fearing it. That contradiction creates inconsistency, but it also reveals attachment. The key is paying attention to patterns, not isolated moments. An avoidant who genuinely loves you may not express emotions perfectly. They may not always know how to sustain vulnerability. But if they consistently re-enter your emotional world, continue seeking connection, remember meaningful details, and emotionally gravitate back toward you despite periods of withdrawal, those behaviors carry emotional weight. Their return is often their unspoken way of saying, I cannot fully walk away from you. And for avoidance, that means more than most people realize. Because emotionally avoidant people do not easily allow emotional dependency. They are careful about attachment. They guard their inner world fiercely. So when someone remains emotionally present in their heart despite their fears, they are able to stay connected to their values and principles, even in the face of adversity. It often reflects a powerful bond. Sometimes they return through practical support instead of emotional speeches. Sometimes they return through small acts of care. Sometimes they return simply by continuing the connection after moments of distance. These actions may appear subtle, but emotionally they are significant. The deeper truth is that avoidants often experience love as an internal struggle between self-protection and emotional longing. One part of them wants complete independence, while another part deeply desires closeness and connection. And when love is real, the desire for connection keeps breaking through the walls they built around themselves. That is why emotional return matters so much. It reveals that despite fear, despite discomfort, despite the instinct to withdraw, the emotional connection still holds power inside them. Their heart keeps moving back toward the person they love, even while their mind tries to maintain distance. And sometimes the greatest sign of love from an avoidant is not that they never leave emotionally for a moment. It is that they continue choosing to come back. Trust is one of the most powerful and misunderstood aspects of love for emotio. Avoidant people. While others may express love quickly through affection, vulnerability, or emotional intensity, avoidants move differently. Their emotions are often deeply protected behind layers of caution, independence, and emotional control. That is why one of the strongest signs an avoidant truly loves you is not dramatic romance or constant emotional expression, it is trust. And when an avoidant slowly begins opening up to you, it is a major sign of love. For avoidance, trust is not casual, it is sacred. These individuals often spend years building emotional walls around themselves. Those walls were not created without reason. Many avoidants learned early in life that vulnerability was unsafe. Some experienced emotional neglect, betrayal, criticism, or inconsistency from people they depended on. Others learned that expressing emotions led to disappointment or pain. Over time, they adapted by becoming emotionally self-reliant. They stopped depending on others emotionally because depending on others once hurt them. As a result, avoidants become extremely careful about who they allow into their inner world. They may appear confident, independent, or emotionally detached on the outside, but internally, they are often protecting sensitive emotional wounds. Their emotional privacy becomes a survival mechanism. They reveal very little because revealing feelings feels risky. To them, vulnerability can feel like losing control. This is why emotional openness from an avoidant carries enormous meaning. When an avoidant begins sharing personal fears, insecurities, memories, or emotions with you, they are doing something deeply uncomfortable for them. Even small acts of vulnerability may represent huge emotional progress. A conversation that seems ordinary to someone else may feel emotionally exposing to an avoidant person. For example, if they begin talking about painful experiences from their past, discussing personal struggles, expressing emotional needs, or admitting fears they normally hide, these moments matter deeply. They are allowing you access to parts of themselves that they do not easily show the world. And avoidants do not do this with everyone. That is why trust becomes their love language. While other people may say, I love you easily, avoidants often communicate love by lowering their guard little by little. Their trust develops slowly, carefully, and intentionally. It may not happen in dramatic emotional breakthroughs. Instead, it often appears in gradual steps. They start telling you things they never tell anyone else. They allow you to see them during emotionally difficult moments. They stop hiding every weakness. They begin including you in their private emotional world.
These are not small things for an avoidant. These are major emotional risks.
The challenge is that many people overlook these signs because they expect emotional openness to happen quickly. But avoidants do not usually trust quickly. Their nervous system needs time to believe that emotional closeness is safe. They watch consistency carefully. They observe whether someone respects their boundaries, handles their vulnerability gently, and creates emotional safety instead of pressure. Safety is everything to an avoidant. When they feel emotionally pressured, judged, criticized, or controlled, they often shut down again. But when they feel emotionally safe, something powerful begins to happen. Slowly, they stop defending themselves so heavily. Slowly, they begin relaxing emotionally. Slowly, they allow connection to deepen. This process can take time because trust for avoidance is not built through words alone. It is built through repeated emotional experiences. They need to see patience, consistency, understanding, and emotional stability before fully lowering their defenses. And when they finally do, their vulnerability often becomes incredibly genuine. Because avoidants rarely fake emotional openness. If they are revealing their true thoughts and emotions, it usually means the connection matters deeply to them. Their trust is earned, not given freely. That is why their slow opening is such a powerful sign of love. Every vulnerable moment requires courage. Every emotional confession requires trust. Every step toward closeness challenges the fears they spent years building protection around. And despite those fears, they choose to let you closer. Not perfectly, not all at once, but gradually, honestly, and meaningfully. This kind of emotional opening often reflects a profound level of attachment because avoidants naturally resist dependence and vulnerability. So when they willingly begin sharing their inner world with someone, it reveals emotional significance that words alone cannot fully capture. For many avoidants, love is not expressed through emotional intensity. It is expressed through trust. And when an avoidant trusts you enough to slowly remove the armor they once believed they needed to survive, you are witnessing one of the deepest forms of love they know how to give. Many people misunderstand love because they look only for emotional intensity, constant reassurance, or dramatic displays of affection. But some of the deepest forms of love are much quieter than people expect. This is especially true with emotionally avoidant individuals. They may not always express feelings openly through words, but their love often reveals itself through consistency, protection, and quiet loyalty. These subtle behaviors can speak louder than emotional speeches because avoidants usually express love through steady actions rather than emotional performance. Emotionally avoidant people often struggle with direct vulnerability. Expressing feelings openly can feel uncomfortable, risky, or emotionally overwhelming for them. As a result, they may not naturally communicate love in traditional ways. They may not constantly say, "I love you," shower someone with emotional reassurance, or openly discuss their deepest emotions, running ions every day. But love is still present, often hidden inside the way they consistently show up, protect, and remain loyal over time. Consistency is one of the clearest signs of genuine emotional attachment from an avoidant. Avoidants value emotional independence, personal space, and self-protection. They do not easily commit their time, energy, or emotional attention to people unless the connection truly matters to them. That is why consistent presence becomes meaningful. If an avoidant keeps checking in, keeps making time for you, keeps returning emotionally, and keeps maintaining the relationship despite their fears, those actions reveal care beneath the surface. Consistency may look simple, but for avoidants it often reflects emotional intention. They may not express emotions dramatically, but they continue being there. They remember important moments. They support you during difficult times. They quietly become part of your life in stable ways. Over time, their reliability becomes their way of saying, "You matter to me." And then there is protection. Avoidants often express love by trying to protect the people they care about. This protection may not always look emotionally cunning, soft, or romantic, but it appears in practical and meaningful ways. They may try to solve problems for you, reduce your stress, help you avoid pain, or quietly make your life easier. They pay attention to your safety, well-being, and emotional stability, even when they struggle to verbalize feelings directly. For many avoidants, acts of protection feel safer than emotional vulnerability. Instead of saying, "I deeply care about you," they may demonstrate it through actions. Making sure you are okay, helping when you are struggling, standing beside you during difficult moments, trying to fix practical problems affecting you. These behaviors often come from genuine emotional attachment. They may not always know how to communicate emotional warmth verbally, but their care becomes visible through responsibility and protective behavior. Quiet loyalty is another powerful sign of love from an avoidant. Avoidants are often selective about emotional closeness. They guard their energy carefully and do not easily invest deeply in people. So when they remain loyal over time, especially during challenges, conflict, or emotional difficulty, it reveals a connection that runs deeper than surface level. Attraction. Their loyalty may not always look emotionally expressive, but it appears through commitment and continued presence. Even when relationships become emotionally complicated, avoidants who truly care often struggle to fully detach. They continue maintaining connection in subtle ways. They stay emotionally attached longer than people realize. They may not always know how to express affection openly, but they continue choosing the relationship through actions. And this matters because avoidants do not naturally stay where they feel emotionally unsafe or disconnected. If they remain invested despite discomfort, it often means the bond is emotionally significant to them. The challenge is that quiet love is easy to overlook in a world obsessed with loud love. Modern relationships often glorify dramatic passion, constant communication, and emotional intensity. But mature love is not always loud. Sometimes love appears in steady reliability. Sometimes it appears in silent acts of care. Sometimes it appears in someone consistently standing beside you even when emotional expression feels difficult for them. Avoidants often love in these quieter ways because actions feel safer, more authentic to them than emotional performance. Their consistency says, "I am still here." Their protection says, "Your well-being matters to me." Their loyalty says, "I have not walked away from you." And for someone who struggles with vulnerability, those actions can carry enormous emotional meaning. Understanding this requires emotional wisdom. It requires looking beneath surface behavior and recognizing that people express love differently. Avoidants may not always love in ways that feel obvious or emotionally dramatic, but that does not make their feelings less real. In many cases, their love is revealed most clearly not through what they say, but through what they consistently do over time. Because sometimes the deepest love is not loud. Sometimes it is quiet loyalty that never stops showing up. So remember this. Not every heart loves loudly, but that does not mean it loves less deeply. Sometimes the people who struggle the most to express emotions are the ones fighting the hardest to keep love alive inside them. Learn to look beyond words, beyond fear, and beyond temporary distance, because real love is often revealed through consistency, trust, loyalty, and the courage. To keep choosing connection despite fear. And as you move forward in your relationships, never forget this powerful truth: love grows where understanding, patience, and emotional safety exist. Thank you for listening. Thank you for opening your heart to this message, and may your life be filled with deeper connection, healing, and extraordinary love. Goodbye, and keep growing into the strongest version of yourself.